Hi, I'd like to read a couple of passages. The first is from my book, The Four Walls of My Freedom, Lessons I've Learned from a Life of Caregiving. I want a good life for my son and my elderly mother, but I also want a good life for myself. Some of the challenges that I've described in my family could be addressed by an injection of cash. But a life that we value and have reason to value is one that has at its heart caring and belonging. If life is a pie chart, money is only one slice. The care of vulnerable citizens is a corporate act on the part of society. It's not just the job of social workers. It takes a village to raise a child, but it takes every citizen in every village to help sustain each other. I have never met another parent of a son or daughter with disabilities who did not know what they needed to thrive. We know that paid care, together with the love and support of friends, family, and neighbors, is for us the key to a good life. This is a future we must build for everyone, including those with differing abilities. For the sake of love and decency, we must be allowed to build it. The second reading that I would like to do is from my co-written book with Dr. Zachary White, The Unexpected Journey of Caring, the transformation of loved one to caregiver. A new caregiver is like a driver in a foreign land. The vehicle is a stick shift. The terrain is mountainous with many switchbacks, and there are no maps, timetables, or rest stops. A catastrophic event or diagnosis catapults a caregiver into a territory that is poorly lit and offers up no familiar landmarks. The roads in this new world are all one way, careening toward a new normal. There is no going back. Fear, confusion, self-doubt, and almost unendurable worry swirl to make the first days of sudden onset caregiving a blur. At this stage, it's difficult to retain information or to make important decisions. A future that was once so sure and so carefully planned is suddenly random, chaotic, and completely unknowable. There are a few basic truths that reveal themselves in almost every story of the early days of giving care to someone with a serious illness, disability, or life-threatening effects of aging. The first is that love remains intact. Looking into the eyes of a loved one and touching her hand is the beginning of resolve to harness love as the fuel for building a new kind of future together. When it melds with need, the power of love cannot be overestimated in healing the hearts and minds of families. It is the single most important ingredient in locating the path forward and the strength to walk it.
Welcome here, everybody. We are so excited to have you here for the first ever Luke's Legacy Book Club event. We are going to be, and Kinga is excitedly sharing both books upon which our guest tonight, Donna Thomson, wrote and co-wrote, and we are just so excited to have her here. There's about a million different things and stories that I can share about getting to know Donna over the years, but I will just say that she is an absolute gift in all that she does. And so I'm going to pass the mic over to you, my friend, and I just look forward to the conversation this evening. Welcome here, everybody.
Well, thank you so much. I really look forward to a conversation and hear everybody's thoughts and experiences of kind of DIY research, as I call it, citizen science. And I guess, I just wanted to share with you what got me started in this and how it actually led to a book, which I never, ever planned at the beginning. So in 2008, I think it was, maybe 2009, early 2009, I had a conversation with somebody that I just happened to meet at an event. She was a professor of Canadian studies at the University of Ulster in Ireland. And we were living in the UK, and I met her and started, talking to her. And at that point, I was just a mom, and Nicholas was living at home. We were looking after him. And I had begun making friends randomly with people who were doing charity work in women's charities, and particularly I became involved in a group of women who were all supporting an organization called Women for Women International that was helping women recover from the experience of war by microloans and all of this kind of different forms of assistance, and also letter writing campaign with people where you would sponsor a woman would sponsor a woman by sending monthly amount and writing letters. And people, I found this very compelling, because I think as women, we support each other naturally, and we need support from other women. So I began to think about about disability in the context of what could we learn for disability and family from countries that were suffering from much greater poverty than we experience in the first world. And also this idea of what can you do creatively when you have virtually nothing? What does support look like? And so I was standing beside this woman, this University of Ulster researcher, and she said, "What are you doing with your, what are you doing here? How do you keep busy?" And I said, "Well, I'm the mother of Nicholas, blah, 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 and Natalie. And so I'm interested in disability. And lately I've become very interested in the development world, in the world of extreme poverty, and what we can learn from the creative work that's being done in that space." And she said to me, "Wow, you would really love the ideas of Amartya Sen." And I said, "I have no idea who that is." And she said, "He's from India, and he won the Nobel Prize for Economics in 1998. And she said, "I am a scholar in his approach. That's my field." And she said, what he says about poverty and adversity in general is that money should not be the measure for well-being. We should look and ask, how can a person be supported to have a life that he or she values within circumstances of adversity? And when she said that, honestly, I was like, all the oxygen went out of my body. And I thought, oh my God, this is an idea that gives meaning and purpose to my life. I went because, like all of you know, I had lived my life trying to beg for some little crappy something or other in the way of support. And all of a sudden I thought, here is an idea that flips that on its head. First of all, it does not deny the level of the needs in our family, but it asks, what do we choose? What does a life that we value look like? And the justice part of his argument is that we have a right to that. And I thought, oh my God, like I was just obsessed with this idea. And I started reading absolutely everything that I could find on the capability approach, even if it was to do with South Africa, India, the women of India, who, by the way, said, there is no me, there is only we. And it was so fascinating to me to figure out what could I learn from Sen and his work. So I got in touch with Amartya Sen, and he agreed to meet with me at Cambridge. And he took me to lunch actually at Cambridge. And it was the most hot date of my whole life. I was so nervous, so nervous. And I was very afraid that after I had done a year actually at that point of intensive research, I thought, I have to ask him if it's okay that I use his idea in the context of my family in Ottawa with all our privilege. And is it valid that I could use his idea in this way to do an analysis of the capability approach and how it would inform what programs and services were helpful to us in us having a life that we value and have reason to value. That's his language. Or did the programs and services actually harm us, in that respect? So I went through my memory banks, and I went through all of our family experiences with a capability approach lens and said, this program helped us, that program did not. And so I was already on a journey to write a book, even though I didn't know it at that point. I was just writing and writing. And so I went up for lunch with him this one day. And I said, Professor Sen, this is who I am. This is my interest and my passion for your work. And it matters so much to me personally. Would it be okay if I wrote something that is using your approach in this way? And he said to me, I didn't write a theory. I wrote an approach. And if it can't be used in many different contexts, then it's not a very good approach. You go ahead, use my approach, whatever way that you want for disability in Canada. So I cried a little bit and I said, thank you. And he said to me, this is what researchers do for people like me who express a passion and an interest, and I want to thank them for the rest of my life. He said, I would like to introduce you to Sabina Al-Khair, who is the head of the Oxford Poverty Index at Oxford. And he said she's a co-author of the Happiness Index in Bhutan. And she does a lot of work in evaluating the capability approach and whether or not it leads to well-being. So I thought, oh my gosh, I need to speak with her. So he took out his phone. He called her. Hi, Sabine. Here's Donna. I want you to meet Donna. Speak to Donna. And so there I was talking to Sabina Al-Khair. And she said, oh, I'll do a well-being index for your family. And so she came in and visited me in my home where we lived in London at the time. And she she said, I've got about an hour and a half to speak with you, but I've left some Bhutan monks out in Oxford Street. They're shopping at Selfridges, and I don't know if I can leave them alone for much longer than an hour and a half. I couldn't believe it. So anyways, I thought, okay, fine. She did a well-being index, which is it's a chapter in The Four Walls of My Freedom. And uh and it was very, very revealing how each member of my family answered these questions about mobility, pain, spiritual fulfillment, meaning and purpose, fun and play, freedom to choose, and where all these domains, how my daughter, Nicholas himself, my husband, I felt about these, domains and what agency we had or didn't have over. And we did these, over a period of time when Nicholas was at his worst and sickest. And then when he was pretty stable, we did it again. And she analyzed the data for us and used this to teach one of her courses at Oxford too. So I guess my point that I wanted to make and talk about is that, you know what, if you find an idea that you really, really love, the exercise of asking yourself, what does this idea mean to me and to my family? And then kind of, even if it's not a book, but it becomes a journal or something you write about, how does this idea, or even if it's a conversation with a researcher who is championing this idea that you love, how does this enhance my life? How does it change my perspective on my challenges that I have as a mother? That the way I think about my family in society, the capability approach did suddenly make me feel that we belonged in society when I hadn't thought that we did before. So I think I'll stop there. And because I could go on about other times I've picked up the phone and called researchers that I really love their line of inquiry. I've never been turned down from a conversation. I find that researchers are so generous, and compared to clinicians, I have also tried calling doctors. If I found a journal article that I thought might help Nicholas, I'd pick up the phone, call that person. And sometimes they'll take your call, sometimes they're too busy, but I've never, ever been turned down for a conversation by a researcher. I find they're very, very generous and also curious about, why are you calling me? And I'm, curious and kind of flattered. And of course, I want to talk about my ideas and different applications of my ideas. So people generally, in my experience, have always said yes. I imagine that you might have questions about how do you actually get a book published, or, how do you manage the whole book part of a project of inquiry? But I didn't want to go there in case nobody was interested in that. I just wonder, is there anybody on the call today who may be thinking about writing a book? Yeah,
Maybe. Love
Kate,
that.
Definitely.
Elizabeth, maybe.
Yes.
Mairead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
working on it.
You are, eh? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So how is research, I'm guessing research is part of your book.
Hmm.
Is it a strictly academic book you're thinking of?
Well, I'm trying to, both finish the academic piece and then there's something that's brewing. I think that would be less academic. I think that's what I'm trying to sort of piece together right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Whether it's more of like, I mean, not to navel gaze, but a memoir type of thing or something along those lines. I've been writing here and there, trying to see what comes up, but yeah, I feel
Mhm.
very tentative, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what the first book, The Four Walls of My Freedom, is really, I guess I would describe it as a political memoir. Um, it definitely has lots of features of memoir in it, but I chose which memories to write about to illustrate an idea that was more political or more philosophical than that I wanted to sort of illustrate. So I used the narrative to illustrate ideas. Yeah, and but that's not to say that narratives on their own and extremely powerful and um I think about lots of academics have written care related narratives, like Arthur Kleinman, for example. The Soul of Care is a wonderful book that he wrote about caring for his wife with Alzheimer's, but he draws in a lot of his work as a medical anthropologist and um, narrative medicine. He draws on that a lot. So for sure, I think there's lots of options, and sometimes when you start writing, it kind of draws you in one particular direction or other. Yeah. And Kate, you had your hand up. You're thinking of writing as well?
I am. I have two little projects on the go. One is more of a like an experienced story. Just kind of we've gone through some really unique situations, especially living in Northern Ontario, that I wanted to make sure other families know that maybe they're not alone, or that we've experienced something similar. Um, and then another one is more of like a little passion project I have that's about making like a living storybook that would go along with my son. So if, like, let's say tomorrow something were to happen to me, um anybody who were to, like, my daughter or a caregiver, whoever would take on the responsibility of being caregiver, would know like his story, right from like medications and allergies, but all the way to like favorite pajamas, where did I buy them. So I'm kind of working on those two ideas.
Mm, yeah. Those are really wonderful ideas. And for your passion project, something I saw in a Facebook caregiver support group the other day, was somebody proposed this idea of a comfort list. And it's a list of everything that is comforting for a person. And then also a second list that things that are the polar opposite of comforting. So I don't like, if when I'm sick, I don't want somebody speaking loudly, or whatever. I like music, but only this type of music. And so I just thought that was so cool. I was going to blog about the idea of a comfort list and then make one for Nicholas, but also for myself, give it to my husband. um, but yeah, I just thought that was a pretty cool idea. Inga.
I actually have a question on behalf of someone who couldn't be here, but I know she'll be watching the recording.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm familiar with the logistics of academic publishing. You know, you send your book prospectus to a few publishers and they say,
Mhm.
you know, yes or no. How does it work for like a non-academic book? Do you like have a book and then you try and find a publisher? Do you approach publishers and say, I'm thinking about writing this? Are you interested? Like, can you walk us through this process a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think the big decision that people have to make is whether if it's non-academic, you have to make the decision whether you're going to self-publish or you're going to go for a traditional publisher. So there are benefits to both those routes. Self-publishing, first of all, you need some money to put out to publish. It's not free, it's not cheap either to self-publish. On the other hand, when you sell books, you get to keep the money. And so you don't make very much, if any, money with traditional publishers because the cost of publication is so high and distribution and all of their costs that the royalty rates are very low. And I think they're usually 8%, which sounds like more than it is, because they will place a whole pack of book orders and they'll send like 200 books to this bookseller in Peoria or someplace, or, you know, someplace outside Calgary, whatever. And then if 150 of those books are not sold, if they're returned to the publisher, that's minus off the money you make as an author. So you know, authors' whole second job is selling books. We could talk about that in a minute, but that's a whole second job that's just as much work as writing the damn thing. So there is that piece. However, the good part about going with a traditional publication route is that you get reviewed in newspapers and you get to do literary festivals. If it's a work of literature, they will send you on, you know, a book tour, or you get to go to authors festivals, so, and do readings and book sales there. So that's super fun because you get the conversation you've always wanted about your ideas that you've been thinking about alone in your house for maybe 5 years as you're writing this thing. And then the other thing is that, you know, a book, I guess I'm going to say particularly if it's not self-published, becomes an important part of your CV. And, you know, if you want to do speaking tour, or you want a job, or you want a voice, it is validation of you and your ideas. You can use a book title for all of those things. It's hard to get published. I was very fortunate both times for both books, and both of my books are quite different from each other. So the first one, once I knew that I wanted to write this book, and I was, as I said, deeply involved in research, I approached a friend of mine who actually owned a book publishing company. And I said, are you interested in this subject? And she said, actually, I am. And so she said, come back to me when you've written it, and we'll talk then. So, but I figured, okay. And I did. I got a contract, and that was the first hardcover edition. Her company went out of business, and another publisher bought my title and published it in paperback 4 years later, which was great. That meant another book tour. And I wrote 2 new chapters for the paperback edition. And so the second book, I was already becoming, I was writing quite a bit. I was writing for Troy Media, which is a media company that places articles in newspapers all over the place, small papers. I was writing for Policy Options magazine. I was writing for Psychology Today, all these articles out there. That will get you interest in a publishing house, at a publishing house. You go to a book publisher and you even if they say they're not taking new submissions, they are. But if you have a portfolio of publications already in magazines or even academic journals, and you have a hot topic right now, caregiving writ large and family, disability, aging, care is a hot topic. So people will be interested in these narratives. I'm going to, family narratives involving health challenges are going to be interesting. And you will want to look at what are the best sellers that are similar to yours, because that's what publishers do. So that in my second book, The Unexpected Journey of Caring, which I co-wrote with a professor at Queen's University from North Carolina in Charlotte, Zachary White, we were looking at another book about Alzheimer's care called The 36-Hour Day. The 36-Hour Day has over, I don't know how many copies it has sold, but 2 million. It's a massive bestseller. And we said to the publisher, ours is like that. And so, they said, okay. Yeah. So, and it actually came out with another similar book in the same list from Rowman and Littlefield, which is a huge book publisher that publishes like 1,000 titles, I think, a year. It's just massive. It's like a factory. And they do half academic and half general audience, but with a bit of an academic slant. And another book, similar book, was published alongside ours called Working Daughter, about parental care when you're working, being a woman. It sold very well. And ours has sold pretty well too. But it was hard during the pandemic to do book sales. I've got lots of boxes of books in my cupboard here that I'm not doing live events because of Nicholas, right now. So it's kind of hard to actually sell the books, but online sales are going pretty well. And yeah, so it's a lot of work, but it's also, as I say, it's kind of fun once you get it done and out there, and you're able to have conversations like we're having right now. This is my idea. This is why I was passionate about this idea. This is what it meant to me and my family. And the whole around narrative, the whole process of saying which memories and which experiences do I choose to write about? Why am I writing about this? It's not just that you write about everything that happened. You have to go through a curatorial process. And then you also have to sit down and say, what really happened that day? and you have to close your eyes and work hard at telling the truth. And check in with other people. Is that your memory too? And review medical records, and reread medical records, which I did. And we have so much of that stuff. I mean, mountains and mountains of it. And it was hard. That part was hard.
Now, Donna, we have a comment in the chat about, do you have a website where all your books and writing is collected and where I can find links to read and buy your book? This is awesome. So helpful. Just did a pitch to CBC person first article a few weeks ago and was rejected.
Oh,
Need to start with smaller steps. Just one brief comment, Erin, from my own experiences with writing for CBC. Give yourself time. If you don't hear back in like about 2 weeks, move on to the next place to go to as well too. But that would keep trying along the way.
yeah. Oh, I can't imagine tell you how many times I've been rejected my stuff,
yeah.
and I just recycle it. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. And CBC that's hard they're a hard nut to crack, but there are lots of other magazines that are constantly looking for content. Today's Parent is one. There's a whole bunch of ones that are the free ones that they give out at the grocery store. Like one is called Caregiving, one is called Today's Kids in Motion. And it's BCS Publishing, and they publish a whole bunch of healthcare related magazines that are free, and they don't pay. Well, they don't pay very much. They might give you $50 or something. I don't know what they might offer. They're always trying to get it for free. But if you're wanting to build up your CV and also just the habit and the discipline of regularly writing, then do lots of those. Yeah. Absolutely. And I do find having a blog, and my website is my name, www.donnathomson.com. And the book reviews and book stuff is all there, but both of the books are available through Amazon and Indigo and all that, and they're all available in public libraries too. So but yeah, as far as on the website, you'll see there's a blog and that blog is probably 15 years old, and there's I don't, blog as often anymore as I used to, but I used to try to write something every day. And it's a muscle. And to be a good writer, you need to write a lot and read a lot too. And I don't think of myself as a person who is very clever, honestly. What I do, though, what I know I do well is I connect ideas that are other people's ideas. So speaking of ideas, if I'm driving my car, I'm usually listening to CBC, and then I will listen to that show, Ideas, and I'll think, there's something really cool and interesting. I read something that reminds me of that. And then I think, something that happened in 2003 in our family connects with those two things. And I'll boom, 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 like connect those things and then write down what that means to me. So I think that type of exercise for those of us who want to combine a personal family narrative in some way to make it meaningful to the rest of society or to other families like ours. I always had a mission, a values-driven mission that I wanted to present our family experience in some way that would make people care about us who had nothing to do with disability. Like, that was a general motivation that I've always had. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to try to think, why do I want to write this? For what purpose? For what audience? And then just write often, in short. The blog is a great thing to start with if what you want to do is practice. Yeah. And I feel like I'm talking too much, so I want to know what you guys think about all of this, and is it helpful? And are you interested in writing? I mean,
Okay,
I
I have
guess,
a
is
question.
writing for public, writing for yourself? Those are two different things as well.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I started with the blog. I got right into it, got all excited, and I'm still paying a fortune for it every year. But then I struggled with the criticism, aka
Oh,
my sister.
from whom?
My sister. Yeah. Um, she's a creature of her own. She does not believe my son should be alive and blah, blah, blah. But there was a couple different little things that came back, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, here I am trying to bare my heart and soul and being vulnerable, because my whole purpose for doing it is trying to, like, I feel like nobody really understands the world that we walk in, because they don't walk in our shoes. But if we can share a little bit, then maybe we can help open people's eyes. So that's why I tried, doing it. But I find myself hesitant to get back into it because that vulnerability exists. And that's also for us, like, part of the memoir, like, Sarah Pott, which many people here know. I listened to her speak one time, and she said, I don't share my memories until they're scars, not scabs. And I just keep going, okay, so, like, but then it's not fresh in my mind. So I guess my question for you is, when you say you write daily, because, like, I do, like, I this is, just 2 months of my life here in a book, but choosing what to actually put out into the universe, what to put live, because, like, everybody's heard me talk, and that's actually, to be honest, the biggest debate I've been having, because I just got billed again for the website. And I'm going, do I get back into the blog, or do I start the whole aspect of vlogging? Because you know me, I'm a little animated and like to tell my story with emphasis. And so do I do that, or do I do it? You know what I mean? But then I keep talking a lot. So I'm shutting up now. Okay, bye.
Well, Ray, I guess I'm looking at you about the vlogging and about the spoken word and sharing. But don't you think, Ray, if we're comparing the written word to the spoken word, it's still just as important to ask yourself, why am I telling this story? Who is my audience? What do they need to know exactly? Do I need to tell them everything? Or how do I package something? And then of course, how do I not be hurt by this?
Absolutely. There's always critics. I mean, that's in life and in writing in many ways. I try not to read the comment section of anything that I do get published. Partially, well, with the exception of one time, the first thing I put out through CBC, somebody thought they were being the most compassionate person in the world to say, I'm so sorry for your loss, but you could have saved yourself several years if you had just, like, straight up unalived him. And yeah, wise words. But anyways,
Wonderful with my sister.
so basically what I had said there was the one time where I actually jumped in and I said, just thank you for your insights. You have made an official donation to a disability rights organization in Ontario. Thank you for your donation. And that was it. And you put that energy where it's most conducive in that way. Sometimes it's some people cannot be sold, and that's just the way it is, but they're not your audience as well. I think that's kind of the big thing as well too. I mean, at one point I can say that there were people in my life who, because I wrote about a lot of things, felt they were going to plan a staged intervention because they thought that was concerning. But at the same time, there are people who all the time kind of message me and say, you know, I'm glad you said that out loud because nobody else does, and I don't feel alone anymore. And so I'm just going to keep being me because of moments like that along the way. So part of, I think, the thing that I've learned over the years, and a lot from Donna, from a lot of reading as well too, from people like Sue Robbins, was that part of that is kind of an inner character understanding and acceptance of who you are and how you learn along the way. My first bits of writing were terrible, but you evolve, you learn, you figure out who you want to talk to, why you want to write these things out. Sometimes it is just for you, and sometimes it really ends up being, but yeah, those goals will come out to whatever they are. Like for me, writing right now, my book's about death, but at the same time, I know snappy subject matter, but at the same time, I had a lot of people when Luke passed away who basically said, I feel like I need to learn from your experience. And I kind of said, oh gosh, I'm going to have to write this down, aren't I? And they went, yes, please. Because there's so much about how communities like we are now, we become tied together and we learn from one another in terms of those experiences. And so if I don't put that out into the world, nobody else talks about it. But then on the other end as well too, for that, it ends up being, it is a humongous research gap and we don't know nearly enough about it. And people, I can say on a professional end, are fascinated by the idea when I talk about it. So that's partially for them too, because I don't think they understand the full scope of the subject matter and why it's important. So my audience ends up being people who don't want to feel alone and who kind of want to, who are scared to approach a very sensitive subject, but I'm going to try to come at it with some grace and kindness and compassion. And then researchers who don't get to see the tail end, you know, after someone's passed, that's it. So what does that story look like? And I want to share that story.
Yeah. The one thing too that we haven't talked about yet, but your remarks, Rachel, made me think about it, is what can we say that is safe when we're talking about other people who are impacted by our experiences too? Like we're writing about our children. Ray, you might be writing about Nick, you know, other family members. And that is a whole other ethical minefield. And, you know, we can sometimes, I see a lot online about principally mothers, many in the autism community, who are writing about their experiences as parents, and adults with autism are very, very critical of them writing about their children without their kids' consent. So I think in terms of taking these very personal, frequently painful experiences of challenge and that are extremely private, and writing about them, putting that out to the public for education, for even for the most noble intentions. I think these are questions that you have to ask yourself alongside, is this memory a scab or a scar? What is this memory to other people who are closest to me? What is it to them? And, you know, so this requires negotiation. I think it's not just about us, as individuals, many times other people are implicated in these experiences too. So we have to check out with them, what are you comfortable with? And the analogy in our family is always, and because my husband worked for the government for many years, and he said, don't say anything publicly that you don't want to read on the front page of the Globe and Mail. And so that's the standard. Do you want to, are you prepared to read about this on the front page of the Globe and Mail? And how is your immediate family about that too? So it's funny because Nicholas, I had to negotiate the first book with Nick. I mean, I wasn't going to put anything out in the world that wasn't okay with him. And I said, Nicholas, do you want me to read it to you? No. And is it about me? Well, yes, part of it's about you. And he didn't want to know about what it said. I said, what about if it becomes a book and people can buy it and other people we don't know read it? And so he said, how much does this book cost? And I said, well, I guess the hardcover is going to be about $30. And he said, okay, well, if I get the money, it's fine with me. So I said, okay, well, I'll give you all the royalties. And he said, okay, fine. When's my first check? He was definitely in it for the money. But many of our kids would not be able to have that conversation about how they feel about some of the worst days of their life, if that's what we happen to be writing about. So, but Nicholas has always made that clear to me. It's okay as long as he doesn't know about it, and as long as he gets the money, he is fine. So, Inga.
I think you're raising so many good points. I'm thinking about another one, and that's the idea that sort of on the other side, the value of like making caregiving and care work public, and because most of the time mothers, right, it's just mothers here, coincidence, right? Mothers' work or caregiving work in general is invisible, right? It happens in the home. Nobody pays you. Nobody really appreciates you, right? And yes, it can be really rewarding, but it's totally, in the larger society, it's totally devalued, right? And this is one way for mothers to put value on it. I am going to turn this into a book that you can actually sell, right? And that's one way of making those experiences visible, first of all, because otherwise they just happen in the home and nobody cares. And putting some sort of value on them and saying, this experience is important. Look, people are paying to read about this and to learn from it. So that's something that I was thinking of as I was reading your books, especially the first one, because and it's not something you talk about, so it's me really filtering your experiences through my own, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if you can sort of comment on the gender aspect of it, and
Yeah.
the fact that it's mothers, right, having these
Yeah.
stories to tell.
Yeah. Well, if in the Four Walls of My Freedom, I quote Eva Kate a lot. And she talks about valuing our kids' lives and their moral worth and their moral personhood, and why their lives are so important, and why the lives of our children are of equal value to the lives of other people who don't have disabilities. So I think I think we can amplify each other's voices to raise the dignity and raise the value of not only of our own mothering experiences, because Eva also talks a lot about the oppression of how society oppresses us by virtue of the fact that we are abandoned to give unsustainable levels of care and we without support. So I think we can help each other, you know, with our projects, whether they be research engagement, whether they be a book project, whether they be telling our stories at conferences or even in a blog or anything like that. But I think the issue that every one of us always has to grapple with is, in telling my story, I think that the question that we have to grapple with is, are we betraying the love and loyalty of our kids by telling these stories? Because part of our job is also to prop up the best version of themselves, you know, that sometimes a fiction, you know, of them being less disabled than they are, say. You know, I read somewhere the other day in another caregiver support group, a woman wrote, she just wrote this amazing phrase. She said, "I was propping up the perfect fake independence of my mother until last Thursday when she fell and broke her hip." And I think about that a lot, because the way we present our kids as being wonderful, and they are wonderful, but to be able to tell a truthful picture is, am I a less good mother? Am I a less loving mother for telling the hard stuff, you know? And so I think we have to wrestle with that and negotiate that and always be, I think, noble in our purpose and clear in why am I telling this story. So it's not just blah, you know, everything for anybody, take whatever is good for you. It's more intentional than that. Yeah, but this is hard stuff, I think, for us, whether we're telling our stories in a research group or we're telling our stories for a book. We want to make sure that we are truthful without being not mindful of our noble purpose. Yeah, I would say that.
I appreciate that so much, Donna. I really feel like at this point in my life as well, too, that I've kind of become keeper of that story. And in some cases, it has unfortunately been subject to some revisionist history from other people. But at the same time, seeing that relationship and the impacts as being a very sacred space is you bring such excellent points here. We have time for one more question before we wrap up for the evening. Amanda, you have the microphone.
I was going to ask if you were going to chit chat afterwards, but that's not my question. So aside from blogging, Donna, are you a journaler? Like, did you journal everything through your journal journey? One thing. And I had a suggestion, and it's because I'm in a virtual, not really a question, I'm in a virtual conference right now in communication ethics, and somebody did a presentation on poetry and the language of decolonization and using poetry to illustrate the hard things. And I was wondering if any of you would ever be interested in doing some slam poetry around our experiences. I just thought it would be an interesting possibility.
I would love that. Oh, I would love that. And you know who else would you? Does anybody know Nancy Huggett? Ah, she's such a great writer. She's the mother of an adult young woman with Down syndrome. Her daughter also had a stroke and stuff. Anyway, Nancy is a prize-winning poet, lives in Ottawa, and her work is just, oh, it's so good. Yeah, and I'm working on a new book, which I'm not working very much because I'm, doing other stuff, but it's an almanac, actually. It goes month by month, and it's a seasonal, being close to nature. What is that? How does that inform your caregiving? And it involves poetry, music, fashion, anything that makes your life rich and has to do with like the spring, the fall, winter, blah, 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 holidays and stuff. And so I've been writing poetry for that. And so, yeah, writing poetry is hard, but it's fun.
But it also gives an opportunity to use, I guess, different illustrations and different tones and different, like, I don't know, my oldest won the Remembrance Contest twice and went to Ottawa for their poetry around Remembrance Day and Veterans stuff as well. But I'm also thinking here we have like Pride Month is a different month, but there's a slam poetry thing there. And I just think that it's, I don't know, it was just a thought that came to my mind today. And as I'm listening to you, because sometimes we're not ready to tell our whole story, but maybe we're ready to tell part of a story. And maybe as a community, we could create that book that would help some of us to get out there. I'm hoping that makes sense.
Oh, does it ever?
And
Yeah.
the other idea I had, sorry, was actually, I've been toying with this for a while and I'm not sure it's ever going to come to fruition. I think it will. It'll just be a time thing and it'll be a community thing again, is writing about the experience of we've had with chronic migraine, but both from the caregiver perspective and the youth perspective. Because I, especially dealing with all the 5 of my kids that have migraine in the different areas, I mean, it could be a composite, but just their point of view and my point of view is sometimes it's a total 180. And I think getting that across would be beneficial. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm sorry for interrupting you. I just got so excited about your idea. Yes.
Let's continue this conversation. Absolutely. I think that that's such a marvelous idea. We can definitely talk about what that is and what that can look like. Perhaps we will bring that to Facebook. And if you are listening in today and you have not had a chance, you are welcome either as a clinician or a parent to join Parents Partnering in Research, which is fully searchable on Facebook as well too. I just also want to add before we close for the evening, Erin's awesome comment that mentions the fact that it would be cool to have videos about tube feeding, but nothing boring. Where's the rap about kids learning tube feeding awareness? And I love that so much. I would definitely say one great model if you're looking for is Miss Rachel on TikTok, and it's not me. Just FYI, but she does little rhymes about things like consent, and they are so nice, but thorough as well too, which is so fascinating. And so if you're looking to study, she might be an interesting role model to kind of consider if you're looking to do fun, innovative ideas with that as well too. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming this evening. I look forward to many more creative spaces. It seems like something has come about here, and I'm getting excited texts for some reason here as well. It seems, my apologies, but at the same time, I just want to say looking forward to sharing this video with everybody as well too. And if you do have any further questions, you can always connect with us on Twitter, which is at FER course, and happy to talk about anything that you see in the videos or about our training program as well too, about family engagement. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. And thank you, Donna, for just such an illuminating conversation.